The day you stop reading is the day you stop learning. And that is a really, really unfortunate place to be. He told me the day you get too big for your britches is the day you stop learning.
That sounds like dad advice for sure.
And so there was a humility to that, being that perpetual learner, no matter the amount of accomplishments and accolades.
Welcome to Working Women Mentor, the podcast that delivers mentorship in every conversation. Each episode, we meet remarkable women who share the real moments, challenges, and breakthroughs that shape their journeys. These are stories that inspire, empower, and remind us of what is possible. I'm your host, Rani and I cannot wait for you to meet today's guest. Let's jump in and uncover your next mentor moment.
Hey everybody, welcome to Working Women Mentor. Today's guest is Amy Green Smith. We are chatting with the beautiful, colorful leadership communication coach and master hypnotherapist who has spent the last 2 decades teaching leaders how to ditch the burnout cycle, set boundaries without guilt, and stop outsourcing their self-worth to everyone else in the room. And today she's spending that time with us and sharing so much. The mentor moments, the tips and ways to recognize the boundary issues, recognize the burnout, and what to do about it. She is generously offering at the end of this episode free resources that will blow your mind. Tune in. Let's go meet Amy. Here we go.
Welcome, Amy Green Smith to Working Women Mentor. How are you today?
I'm so well, Rani. I'm so thrilled to be here with you today.
I love it. Amy, would you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. So my name is Amy Green Smith, and I am a corporate and executive communication coach. So I work with women and also executive teams who are having significant breakdowns in the communication arena. And almost always that kind of falls into 2 major portals. There's an internal element of genuinely believing that your voice matters, your inherent worthiness, and your, quote, enoughness. And then there's the external component of, if I am anchored into that self-worth, if I do believe that my voice matters, how does that inform how I communicate with the outside world? What does advocating for myself, speaking up, what does the anatomy of a boundary or tough conversations look like? Saying no without being riddled with guilt. So those are kind of the 2 major elements that I'm working with most of the time with women, peppering of men. But I find that those things work very much in tandem, sort of the inner element of getting out of your own way, but then also having the tactical, implementable skills to know what to say when you don't know what to say.
Yes, I love that. How many times have we been in a situation where we have no idea how to deliver it? We might be thinking it and feeling it and every bone in our body is shaking, but we just don't know how to get it across. And so I think that is an incredible skill set to learn and to develop over time. And so speaking of incredible things to say, Amy, did you happen to text some of your friends and get a description for our audience to just personally get to know you through their eyes?
I did. I have some really brilliant colleagues who I tapped for this specific request, which I love that you do, by the way. We don't do this enough, where we allow ourselves to really be gassed up by the people who love us. But they both said generous, which I was very shocked by.
Oh, how funny that you were shocked.
I think because I considered myself so boundaried, and because I value what I want and what I need in a way that I think most people do not. And it has really been kind of my life's work. I don't think of myself as constantly pouring in, but I can see what they are actually talking about, because there have been times where they've been in really rough spots and I've given to them considerably. But they said a couple of the adjectives are vivacious, bold, authentic, whip smart, dynamic, deep, smoking. So yeah, they were quite lovely commendations.
It's so interesting. It almost makes me feel like your incredible boundaries and guardrails are creating the ability for you to be incredibly generous in those moments that matter. I think, yeah, it sounds beautiful. Those are great compliments.
Well, it's interesting. Melissa Urban, who was originally known for her Whole30 book that she co-wrote, she now talks a lot about boundaries. And one of the things that she talks about is how safe people feel with you when you are incredibly boundaried. And a lot of times in my work, I will talk about how the antithesis of boundary setting or speaking up is kind of being a shapeshifter, kind of lying. And I would be willing to bet that if I asked everybody listening, what type of individuals do you want to attract into your life? No one is going to say a bunch of liars. They're going to say, I value authenticity, transparency, honesty, integrity. And so we really have to embody being the person that we want to attract. But a lot of times we think putting everyone ahead of ourselves, kind of telling these lies, pretending we're up for the thing that's being requested of us, is this really noble gesture, when in reality, we're kind of selling false goods. So I do think there's a way that we create extreme safety and generosity in relationships by being so forthright.
It's interesting because before you were aware of this, before maybe this became your life's work, take me back to then, because you described this mascara streaked meltdown in your car as a major turning point. What happened? How did you get there? And what did you reveal about yourself?
So this was early aughts. This was around 2005, and I had climbed my way up into a corporate training position for a prestige makeup brand. And, by all accounts, I had a big girl job. I had a company car, an assistant, world travel, and I was commuting quite frequently. And during those commutes, I had gotten in the habit of just being on voicemail and communicating with my various locations. And this was in California. It was before it was illegal to talk on your cell phone in the car. And so I would spend all of my free time doing more work during this commute. And I had felt that I was kind of on the precipice of a burnout breakdown and really burning the candle at both ends. And I did something kind of rogue for me at the time, and I decided to listen to the radio, which felt like a waste of time because I was so focused on work.
So that was indulgent for you to turn the radio on at that point, like check out for a few minutes.
And it really is just a basic human pleasure that I hadn't really afforded myself. And so circa 2005, Kelly Clarkson's Breakaway comes on. And it was like this eruption happened for me, and all of the angst, all of the overwhelm and frustration that I had been harboring just exploded into a pretty hyperbolic scream singing session where I was saying, I'll spread my wings and fly away, I had false lashes staging a rebellion. And I realized in that moment, like, wow, some of these basic human pleasures I just don't even have because I'm sacrificing all of my happiness on the altar of someone else's quarterly profits. This isn't even my dream. And I got back home to my husband, and I kind of held up my hands and like I was pinching something, and I said, I'm this close to completely losing myself. And that was a very pivotal moment for me, Rani, because I realized that if I was going to be so exhausted and so overwhelmed, I wanted it to be for my dream, for something that really mattered to me. And at that point, I had been missing family functions and friends' birthdays and all sorts of things because of lipstick. And I didn't like where that trajectory was heading. There was even a joke amongst the folks who were above me that you can't have pets, you can't really have kids because all you do is work. And that wasn't something that I was interested in propagating. That was quite the
That wasn't the vision you saw of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so you were in this career, Amy, for over a decade. And I'm wondering, once you realize this, once you start belting out the music, you can really verbalize it to your husband. Looking back, I mean, were there some earlier signs that you were abandoning yourself? I mean, I know missing family events, I know things like that, but like, were there things that you could have looked back and said, that's where you should have stopped it right there? Or, hey, that was an indicator that maybe this was going to continue to progressively get worse for me. Are there any telltale signs?
Well, I definitely think missing important events was huge. And it wasn't just that I was missing them. It was the culture and the system in which I worked that made it seem like I was being ridiculous that I wanted to attend those things. And so I think we can't ignore some of the systemic operations that we're a part of in an organization that tells us how we should feel about something. So even though internally and viscerally, I felt like this is a lot being asked of me, or for example, I really wanted to go visit my grandfather who had leukemia, and my family was going to visit him out of state, and I had requested some time off, and they gave me the biggest guilt trip about we need training staff, we need people to be there, it's this huge event. And we always had a huge event. There was always a huge event. It was one of many. And I really fought hard for it. And it turns out that it was the last time that I saw him. And there were a cascading amount of events like that. But I think one of the big pieces of it is realizing how the company operated. And I call that systemic failure as opposed to a you failure. And so often we get stuck in these environments that tell us that we are the problem as opposed to a real systemic issue. And I remember at one point I was there, I believe my superior was out and I had stepped into her shoes. And one of the things that I really understood was there is no way for me to get ahead in this organization, the way that it operates, if I don't have extreme self-sacrifice. I can float under the radar. I can do okay. I can check the boxes, but I will not get ahead unless I truly sacrifice who I am, meaning my health suffers, my relationships suffer, nothing else in my life is stronger. And it's glorified, it's applauded. So I think looking back, if I could have had a more clear understanding of the organizational ethics and ethos of what was applauded and glorified, I think that would have given me a little bit more pause. But I was young. I was in my early 20s and I had this big girl job. I was enamored with it and I was fucking good at it.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. Like you're starting out, you're on fire, right? You're doing wonderful things. And how at that point do you even question? It's like, if I want wonderful things, you feel like that's the price you have to pay. And then it's almost like you start closing your eyes. You get on the treadmill, right? And you just stay on that treadmill. I think that's great advice. I'm curious, Amy, if you're someone listening that is in this culture, this small company culture, large company culture, obviously you have to perform. You have to have outcomes. You have to do well with what you do. But how do they dig into this and go, let me figure out how this place really works? Do you have any advice for that? Because it's hard to do when you're starting out. It's hard to do if it's a career that you're in the middle of even. So what are some things that you could point out for us to be aware of?
Sure. So there is a massive distinction between the structure of an organization and the dynamics of an organization. So the structure is what we say matters. It is our values. It is the role definition. It is operations, everything that is written down about how we are, our modus operandi. The dynamics, however, is the true cadence of the organization. Do we actually act on what we say matters the most to us? Do I really do the job that is identified in my role description, or is something else asked of me? Do we say we have an open door policy, but then if tough conversations come up, we're penalized? So if we have these two elements, imagine that you are taking a much more voyeuristic meta view of your organization and stand outside of it as though you were watching company meetings or the daily practices on a television show or on a theatrical play. And what would you notice about the difference between the structure, what we say we are about, what we say the modus operandi is, versus the dynamics, how we actually live into those things? And is there discrepancy? A lot of times it's difficult for us to get outside of those dynamics, what we're actually doing day to day. And we usually look at the interpersonal nature and analyze, oh, that person is overbearing, or that person's controlling, or these people are always late, and we don't stand outside to look at how does this organization operate at large, because that's a lot bigger than just who you are. And that will give you some discernment around, is this the place that I want to be the squeaky wheel? Or do I want to find a place that lives into their values and their roles and all of the things that have been established from the get-go? Because I do think there's a place to be the Erin Brockovich, to toss tables and make your mark and be really a huge pioneer and change the way something works. And then I think there are other times when it's not worth the cost to your mental well-being and your happiness and your family. So taking a little bit of a pulse of what you're really dealing with, I think can be really advantageous.
That is great advice. Annie, I just had this conversation with a girlfriend recently, and she said, we're having lunch, and I could tell she's just coming off of something, right? And she said, I just left this meeting, and I won't name the gentleman, but she said, I just left this rah-rah corporate meeting. They brought in this speaker, and she said, Rani, he was convicted of murder, took performance drugs to, excel at his career. Reputation is someone I would not want to associate with, but yet everything we do in this company, they talk about ethics and doing the right thing. And then they bring in this person because he's a Hall of Famer, because he's involved in athletics at a high level to motivate us. And she said, let me show you the email that I just sent as I was walking out the door. So she sent them an email and said, I can't believe this. This is who you choose. And you know what they replied with? Well, we can't please everyone. And we'd rather let his criminal issues play out in the courts. I thought, oh my goodness, did they really say that? And so she goes, I'm just going to let it go. But that's a great example of her struggling with that dynamic versus structure, right? It's like seeing it in action and figuring out the type of company you're with. Amy, you have given so much information and advice so far, but I'm curious about who you've met in your life. I'm sure it's many people, but who stands out from someone who's giving you that professional growth, an influential figure that you've had in your life?
I've had a handful, and I really ruminated on this question. And I think one of the most profound impacts on my life was my father. And I decided very early on, I've kind of known this since my formative years, that I did not want to have children. And I remember talking to my father about this. He has since passed, but discussing this with him and saying like, I don't have that desire. I have no interest in motherhood. And he said something really profound, I think, especially for a boomer, where there was so much. I got married in 99, and it was I knew no one who didn't want children. It was a revolutionary act. And everyone asked, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids? And so for my dad to not force that on me, but rather give me this piece of wisdom, he said, for so many individuals, when they hit midlife, they look back and they assess how successful they've been through what they've brought into the world. And for so many individuals, that's through children. Am I proud of who I have been as a parent? And now I would obviously push back and say, do you say that to men or women or both? Or
So I've got a few follow-up questions, Dad.
Yeah. So I have some follow-up. I've got some feedback. I have notes. But he said for so many people, that's reflected in their children. And he said, if you don't opt that avenue, and there really was no judgment, he said, find something that you are able to look back and be really proud of the legacy that you've created. And that has permeated every single role and career step that I've ever had, where I thought, no matter what phase I'm in, whether it's more senior or not, I want to make sure that I am leaving people with something really profound. I remember in my makeup artistry days when I was just an artist, I had not climbed the ladder in any way. There was a woman who sat down who by all society standards would not be deemed extremely attractive. And I was struck by her smile. And I just said, you have the most gorgeous smile I have ever seen. She was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I said, do people tell you that constantly? And she goes, no, not one person has ever told me that.
And then you lifted her up with just that one comment. I love it.
And then there was, cascading events that were far more, profound, I'd say. But come to find out, she had spent the entire day in the hospital with a loved one. And I really took that to heart of whether I'm just painting a face or whether I'm speaking to a crowd of hundreds or thousands, or if I'm working with an executive team. I want to show up with my whole chest and my whole heart and create that legacy. And that was something that was really helpful for me to hear from him. And I remember him telling me too, the day you stop reading is the day you stop learning. And that is a really, really unfortunate place to be. He told me the day you get too big for your britches is the day you stop learning.
That sounds like dad advice for sure.
And so there was a humility to that. Like, okay, there's being that perpetual learner, no matter the amount of accomplishments and accolades.
Hey, working women, have you ever dreamed of starting a podcast but don't have enough time? I have been there. App chaos, endless Googling, tech rabbit holes, content grind, hours wasted, believe me, and not an episode live. That's why I am gifting you my free training, your complete blueprint to turn episode 1 into 30 days of AI-powered content. No overload, 2K of value inside. So go check it out. There's everything you need for week 1 launch and beyond. Visit workingwomenmentor.com/free training to claim yours now.
Dads just have this way of seeing you and seeing and understanding their daughters, I think, and many of them do. Similar, Amy, I didn't think I would ever want children either, but I was just thinking that I never had a conversation with anyone about it. It was just assumed that I wasn't, but I loved that you actually had a conversation. I feel like for me, more of the conversation happened when I said, you know what? I think I am, many, many years later. And he was just like, what? Shock, surprise, acceptance, and great about it. I love that you had that conversation. That's not your defining moment of your life. And nor is my son either my defining moment. I hope not. I hope we can all leave these legacies with everything we touch, right? Whether it be children, whether it's that executive team meeting. I absolutely love that. It can just permeate with all of us as well, with what we touch.
That's right. That's right.
What has mentorship taught you in terms of the difference between being supported and being rescued? Because often people think it is the rescue piece.
I would say that is analogous to enabling, that if you are rescuing someone, there's an enabling element where I'm thinking of, like a baby chick being born and how we all know that you can't help it crack out of its really difficult shell because that is what builds the resilience. And I think so too, we see this a lot in leadership where it's difficult to actually disseminate or let your successors take things on. I'm seeing that with a team that I'm working with right now. And they one of the leaders who is retiring said, what if I think they're making the wrong decisions? And I looked at her and I said, you let them fail. You let them fail. And they all kind of gasped. And
like, what? We can't.
And I said, how many of you are parents? And they are all parents. And I said, can you do everything for your children? How does that really keep them safe? They will not be able to navigate the real world. They have to fail forward. And I think for me personally, I've had to grapple with a massive savior complex that I've been imbued with from a very stringent religious upbringing. And I've seen that play out with clients or friendships where I've felt like, ooh, I need to save you. I'll be the one who can get through to this uncoachable client. I'll be the one who self-sacrifices to take care of my brother or be the friend that you can trust when you've never been able to trust. And then I've realized that for me as a mentor, I have to really find that line of providing the guidance and the support that somebody will need and then backing off and letting them do it. And it is one of the joys of my life to work with clients who no longer need me, because I don't want to create scenarios where there's a dependence of now I can't sort through a boundary or an issue or a work-related task without running it by Amy. I want people to go, hey, I did this thing. I wanted to hear your thoughts. And then I will oftentimes tell them, this is my opinion. This is my perspective. Try it on and see if it resonates. But we tend to give much more credence to somebody who either is an authority or who speaks with authority. And we assume that those things are truth, when in reality, they are someone's vantage point, somebody's perspective. And I want them to do the same thing with me. I speak very emphatically. I speak like I know what I'm fucking talking about. So and I do in many cases, but it's also my lens through which I'm observing. So I want them to take on the opportunity to go, okay, that's Amy's perspective. That is wise counsel. And do I concur or not? So that they have that agency and autonomy. That's what we're really looking at here.
It's also, I wonder about helping them learn to trust an intuition, to understand where their expertise is and is growing, and the level of understanding that they now have, because they're learning that from someone like you, or they're learning that about themselves even.
That's right. That's right. And I will frequently push back and say, I want to hear your thoughts first. What are your inclinations first on how to handle this, so that I can validate them and then they can prove to themselves, I can trust myself. In fact, there's a team that I'm working with right now, and we have now started to, when we are doing a round robin and giving opinions and perspectives, we start with the two that are the most junior. So they are not swayed by hearing their mentors.
I love that. That's so smart. Yeah, because they might change their mind. They might be intimidated to share even, right?
Right. And then they have said, it's so validating for me to say what my instinct is and then have it validated by my superiors that I hold in such high esteem and reverence. And so it's really bolstered their self-confidence, and it's also given credence to their perspective, because their superiors now are looking and saying, oh, wow, I didn't even think of it like that. That's phenomenal. So they're seeing elements that they're bringing to the table that might not have been the case if they thought they just had to listen to others and echo that. So it can be really quite advantageous.
That's really smart. And you can do that with your kids, the younger one, the older one. You can do that in work, in friendship, in groups. That's a really smart way to look at that. Amy, you've talked a lot about boundaries. Okay. So we all need a reminder in setting boundaries. So how do you help women understand that boundaries are not a personality flaw or a lack of generosity? Because as we talked about, your generosity is shining through because of your boundaries. But how are you helping women understand the boundary piece of their life?
Well, when we talk about boundaries or speaking up, we can't overstep that antithetical to that is our pull to people please. So we can't really talk about this concept without talking about the behavior we typically employ, which is shape-shifting in order to make everyone else happy. But what we really need to understand about people-pleasing is that it is a part of our biological makeup. It is a piece of our primitive defense mechanism. So
we're not unusual. We're not a rare case of people, right? It's like part of our makeup that we want to please. Like that, just you saying that gives me a little relief. It's like, okay, I'm normal.
Yeah.
But
we're wired for connection because if you look at our primitive ancestors, there was no tribe of one. You had to belong to an organization in order to survive. And so when we look at our defense mechanisms like fight, flight, freeze, fawn is a newer one that we've kind of discussed as a mechanism to take care of ourselves. If we're thinking about it from a primitive standpoint, this would be if we're about to be attacked by a mountain lion, we might go, here, kitty, 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 here's some food, go over here, right? It's a placating, it's an acquiescing. And I think many of us women would know what that's like to employ fawning when we are being hit on at a club or, for me, this is like 20 years ago. Do people even go to clubs anymore? I don't even know.
People still do it. Yeah.
I'm like, is that a thing? But there are times when actually people pleasing in the face of that might actually keep you alive, keep you safe. So one of the things that I think is really important to understand about why we don't speak up is sometimes it's out of self-preservation, like the anecdote I just explained, or sometimes it's out of outsourcing our self-worth. As in, I need this person to approve of me so I can keep my job. That would be self-preservation. I need this person to approve of me because if they don't, I am nothing or I am not valuable or I'm not enough.
You're valuable. And we do that so often, don't we? I mean, in small ways that I wonder if our subconscious even could knock us on the head and remind us, right. You are valuable. So how do we overcome this?
Well, I think we can
how do we get better? Yeah.
There's multiple entry points. So one is through behavior. So one of the things that I would suggest doing is take an inventory. This is one of the fastest ways you can figure out what boundaries you might need to set, is analyzing with whom do I complain about the most? Now, I'm not talking about just venting or having a rough day and needing to expel that in some way. I'm talking about habitual, chronic complaints about someone who has done a specific grievance that would have no idea either A, that you're upset, or B, to the extent that you are upset.
Ooh, I like that one. That's good.
I had a client who has given me the permission to share. She is a nurse practitioner in a very, very busy oncology ward. And she would speak up, but she would not speak up in a way where she could actually be heard. So her boss would, because she was phenomenal at stuff, I call this penalized for being excellent, would give her more and more work. And instead of saying, that's not tenable, or I will need to decide between this project or this project, she would say, oh, sure, give it to Jenna. Jenna will handle it. Oh, yeah, she doesn't have enough going on.
So a little passive aggressive in there.
Exactly, because she's gregarious, she's loud, she's outspoken. So the natural logic on the other person's behalf is going to be, wow, I'm sure if it was really an issue, she would
say something.
She would say something, and it wouldn't be cloaked as a joke. So if you are communicating by being passive aggressive, if you are being actually aggressive, or if you are if you're pretending like, oh, it's okay, that doesn't count. You aren't communicating the extent of what is actually happening for you. So she was speaking up. She was also speaking up to me. This is another thing that we do where we complain, we're really vocal, but we are telling the people who can't do a goddamn thing about the grievance. So you're upset with your partner, but it's your therapist who gets an earful, or you're pissed at your mom, it's your sister who gets the earful. So asking yourself, would this other person, A, have any idea that I'm upset about it? And B, would they have any idea the magnitude to which I am upset about it? So with this particular client, we had a big strategy session. She went back and talked to her boss, and she did it in a way that she could be heard and said, hey, listen, I would like to believe that I present like I've got it all together and like I can handle everything you throw at me. The reality is these particular pieces, these elements of my workload are untenable. And I want to stay here. I want to continue to be a part of this organization, but something has got to give. And she owned it. She apologized. She said, I recognize that the way I've been vocal has not shown you the magnitude of the impact on me. And then she brought solutions. Here's what I'm requesting. Here's what I'm asking for. And let's be in collaboration. Yes, no counteroffer. How can we change some of these things so that it really is different for me and that you are getting your needs met, as am I. And I will tell you what, Rani, since she had that really candid, vulnerable conversation with him, things have dramatically changed. We no longer are talking in our sessions about how shitty her boss is or how frustrated she is at work.
Oh, wow.
We are talking about all of her personal life and all of the travel that she's doing. So a lot of times, the things that we are the most upset about, the things that we chronically complain about are indicative of the first place we need to look to start speaking up and establishing boundaries.
That is such great advice. It makes me so happy for your client. And also for her boss too, right? Like what a great, you sometimes, it's so good for both parties, as we said earlier, because sometimes you just don't know what we're not mind readers, right? Yeah, I love this advice. This is wonderful. Okay, so Amy, part of your training is hypnotherapy. So I'm curious how this works in terms of your practice, because to me, it's incredibly fascinating of how much of what we have going on is happening way below the surface, way into that subconscious. And so how has this part of your practice helped you understand what people are going through? Share some more about it and your approach with hypnotherapy.
A few years back, well, I guess 6 or 7 years ago now, I really wanted to get to the bottom of what actually created sustained and lasting change in the area of beliefs. So as I mentioned earlier, at the start of our time, so many people have some iteration of a belief of, I'm not enough, I'm not valuable, I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, I'm not lovable. And all of that to me is synonymous with self-worth. And I wanted to find out, is there a way that we can actually get to the root of those subconscious beliefs and create lasting change, which landed me into the field of hypnotherapy. And what I learned there was that the critical factor of our mind, which is also known as the inner critic, which is the mechanism that scans for threat. Like, are we in danger here? Which is why we compare to other people. We frequently look at the inner critic as something that is negative. And it is, I don't need to get into it at length, but it's actually the exact same mechanism as intuition. But when it keeps us safe, we call it intuition. When it gets in our way, we call it the inner critic. But it's the mechanism for safety. Are you sure you can speak up? We might get in trouble. Are you sure that you want to say that you're enough? We have all this other evidence that says, no, you're not. So it's telling us, wait a minute, can we proceed here? But the subconscious faculty of the mind, depending on who you talk to, is roughly 90% of the mind's power. The inner critic guards. It guards everything that's in the subconscious. So let's say you grew up in a situation where you had a very volatile caregiver and you realized that in order to stay safe, you people pleased that caregiver. You walked on eggshells in your own home, you placated them, you flew under the radar, and that was a way for you to stay safe. Well, now in the subconscious mind that's running the show, you've created a positive association with people pleasing. The narrative is, the belief that's anchored there is people pleasing keeps me safe. So now, consciously, if you try to tell yourself, I can speak up for myself, I deserve to take up space, I am enough, the inner critic goes, hey, bitch, no, you're not. We've got 90% under here that says people pleasing is the way to go. But what's so great about hypnosis is when you are in between awake and asleep, that inner critic is like, oh, we're about to go to sleep. Cool, we're safe. We don't have to be so on guard. And it goes to sleep. So, because if you think about it, when we're fully asleep, that's the most vulnerable we are. We have to believe that we are safe in order to completely go to sleep. So
That's true.
All that hypnosis is getting you into a brainwave state that is slowed down enough that the critical factor of the mind is dormant, goes to sleep. And what that allows us to do is take beliefs or thoughts that we want to attach to and drop them into the subconscious much, much faster with less kickback. Because if you're trying to do affirmations and tell yourself, I believe I'm enough, or I can take up space, that inner critic kicks in like, this is so stupid, right? This is dumb. Why? Who do you think you are? Because
you've tried this before. It didn't work.
Exactly. Because you're in the conscious faculty of the mind. So if we can allow that inner critic to I think of it like a guard dog that we give a little treat to. Like, here, just go chew on this little treat and hang out in the corner. We're all good. So that we can drop these new empowering beliefs into the subconscious mind.
That being said, once we realize that inner critic, once we realize these patterns that we have with maybe boundaries or speaking up, how can our listeners begin to rebuild trust with themselves after years of ignoring their own needs? Because often, we don't know where to start, Amy. It's like, something's off. You know that, you have these patterns, but just how do we jump in and start the work?
One of my favorite tools that everybody can use right now is what I have termed progressive language. So instead of talking to yourself with affirmations saying, I am enough, I deserve to take up space, I am intelligent, anything like that feels like jumping from A to Z, let's do like an A to D maybe, and use a prefix that uses progressive language, meaning I'm exploring, I'm on my way to, I'm examining. So it would sound something like, I'm re-engineering my beliefs around enoughness, or I'm exploring what self-trust really looks like. I am curious about how I can change my relationship to my intelligence. So we're using language.
You're labeling it almost, right? Like you're putting that name out there of what you're doing.
We're saying I'm on my way instead of that definitive affirming that for so many people feels like a bold-faced lie, where you're just like, forget it. And then we don't continue to speak kindly to ourselves. But if we say, I'm exploring what trust in others looks like, I'm re-engineering my relationship with affluence or money, I am re-engineering my relationship to my body, or exploring what a positive self-image might look like. Those types of, almost like a disclaimer, can help us actually say something kind to ourselves repeatedly over time, which also,
and that's where the magic happens, right? Like once we say one thing, it will start building that momentum.
You can also use actual disclaimers. And I suggest using those at the beginning. Like, even though this feels like a lie, I am enough. Even though this feels awkward as fuck, I am able to take up space, right? So you disclaimer it at the beginning, but you end with the affirmation. So all of these little workarounds to help us attach to something we can actually say to ourselves instead of feeling like it's a cold-faced lie.
Hey, what is your mentor moment that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
So I think perhaps one of the most pivotal mentorships I've ever had has been with my father. And there were a handful of nuggets of wisdom that he left me with. One was, the minute you get too big for your britches is the day you stop learning. And that really taught me to stay humble and realize that no matter what I accomplish, I get to celebrate that. But there's still another element of learning that is to be had.
Amy, where can our guest find you and support you?
Thank you for asking. You can find me over at amygreensmith.com, and all of those names are spelled the basic bitch way. Nothing exciting there. So amygreensmith.com, and you'll see it right there on the homepage. I have a 6-part private podcast series called Boundaries Over Burnout. And it is essentially like a mini course. It has a corresponding workbook to really help you implement what you are learning. And you can also find that at amygreensmith.com/free. Either one of those will get you to that goodie. And I really, truly hope you enjoy and use it. Really use it.
Hey, wait, before you go, I have one ask. Would you please leave us a review? Tapping on those stars on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening to this will really help us. It'll spread the word and your voice and your impact as well, because every episode we are giving mentor moments. And I hope you can continue this conversation with us at workingwomenmentor.com. To apply to be a guest, find show notes and episode details. And if you've ever wanted to start a podcast, we've got the perfect course for you. Follow us on Instagram at Working Women Mentor and DM us the word mentor, and I'll send you over our free guide on mentorship so you can incorporate it into your life. Thanks so much for joining us, and until then, cheers until the next episode.